Binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free over at inspireddisorder.com/plus.
This is The Ray Taylor Show.
This is my top 5 Rambo movies ranked. There are only 5 Rambo movies, so obviously there will be none left off this list. I will just be ranking them. Recently rewatched them this past week, revisited some classics, rewatched the newer releases, and was able to put together this list. Pretty effortless, fun rewatching of a lot of these movies, some classic movies, kind of reframed some of these movies in a new light. It's kind of crazy. Of course, Rambo, the Vietnam vet, special forces badass who takes on armies all by himself, and just looking for a little bit of respect. Let's get into all these movies, by the way, written by Sylvester Stallone. The second film was co-written by James Cameron, which I thought was interesting. He directed, I believe, just directed the Rambo from 2008, but wrote all of them, which I thought was pretty impressive. Just to see how... Oh, I'm sorry, he didn't write the first one. I think he wrote all the sequels, didn't write the first one. But still, very impressive to see Sylvester Stallone taking a big part of his movies. I think that's a pretty common thing for a lot of his films to be pretty involved in them. But let's get it started, shall we, with my top 5 Rambo movies ranked, starting off with number 5. This is my least favorite film. This movie feels the most least like a Rambo movie. Aside from Rambo being in it, most of this movie does not feel like a Rambo movie. Feels a lot more like a Taken movie, and feels a lot more like an old white conservative kind of just letting off some steam in the writer's room. And this movie, coming in at number 5, is Rambo: Last Blood. This is the newest, the latest release. Came out 2019, right as the pandemic was about to kick off. I remember seeing this in the theaters and being highly disappointed. Like I said, very much a conservative fever dream in a lot of ways. You have Rambo living in Arizona now at the end of Rambo, the 2008 Rambo. That movie ends with him going back to his family's ranch in Arizona. So this picks up at his family's ranch in Arizona, where he's living there with a friend and his friend's daughter. And the daughter decides she wants to go to Mexico to find her dad. And Rambo is not a fan of her dad. He hates her dad. He calls him evil, black-hearted, all this kind of stuff. She tricks him into going, and as you would expect by somebody who was inundated and constantly consumed right-wing propaganda, when her friend that she meets up with in Mexico is the most stereotypical Mexican. Like, if you were to think of the stereotypical chola in your head, from the way she spoke to her hairstyle to the way she dressed, you would imagine exactly what her friend looks like. Completely cartoonish, completely stereotypical. Her friend takes her to go meet her dad. When she first meets her dad is like super kind of happy. It seems like the dad is like almost willing to like reconcile with the daughter until she asks why he left. And then on a dime, he turns into the most despicable, horrible person where it's like, I hated you and your mother. I never wanted to have you. And as soon as your mother died, I got the hell out of there. Right? Like, just kind of how conservatives think of Mexicans in general, right? Just evil people that hate their kids, despite him being all super happy when he opened the door. Kind of crazy. Come to find out, her friend set her up. She takes her to a bar to like let off some steam, and immediately this girl gets kidnapped and sex trafficked, right? Because that's what happens when you go to Mexico. It looks horrible. It's very impoverished. Your dad is like this kind of super nice guy, but also super evil. Your friend sets you up. The friend that looks like a chola just has no problem selling her friend out to a sex trafficking group. So she instantly gets sex trafficked, gets hooked on drugs so she can't leave, and it becomes like a Taken movie where Rambo's got to go to Mexico to save his friend's kid. And of course he does. There's some fun, like, brutal action moments. Sure, he gets her. He doesn't get her at first. He gets fucked up. There's this random reporter lady that helps Rambo heal up. She's nowhere to be found in the rest of this film. She only exists to help Rambo heal from his wounds from getting beat up by this cartel. Once he gets healed up, he goes right to the place where the people are being sex trafficked, knocks on the door, and like orders a young girl like he's ordering the number 5 off of a McDonald's fast food menu, right? They let him in because that's how illegal brothels and cartels work. You just knock on their door and ask for shit, and they just let you in. So they let him in. He wrecks house, gets this girl back, and on the drive back, for some reason, she dies. It's not an OD. You don't OD from opiates. I mean, you do OD from opiates, but you don't die from ODing, or you don't die from the withdrawals, I'm saying, actually, of opiates. You could die from the withdrawals of alcohol, but not opiates. Opiates, you definitely feel sick. You feel horrible. Maybe you can die, but she's like a young person. She's not dying. It's not like she just shot up, so it's not an OD. It's not really clear why she dies, but for some reason on the drive back home, she dies. Right? But that's not enough. Right? Rambo coming home with the dead girl isn't enough. For some reason, the cartel wants to seek revenge on Rambo for stealing one of their girls. And I guess beating up some of their customers. So the entire cartel goes to Arizona to seek revenge because, of course, that's how the border situation works for all these conservatives. Like, oh, the cartels are going to come invade America, right? Caravans of illegal criminals are coming to like kill you. But thankfully, Rambo's a good guy with a gun. And he sets up all these traps around his house. By the way, he's got a bunch of tunnels for some reason. Even though the tunnels give him PTSD of Vietnam, he's got all these tunnels. So he sets booby traps everywhere, which is kind of cool. They show up. He wrecks shop. Super brutal. Guts the dude. Whatever. Dumb movie. Not very much a Rambo movie. Very conservative propaganda in a lot of ways. Kind of a bummer. Not kind of a bummer. A definite bummer. Not just not good. Not good. So, number 5, Rambo Last Blood. A movie that should never have been made. It should have ended, the franchise should have ended with the 2008 Rambo when the movie's over and he goes back home to Arizona. That's all we needed. That's it. Don't need any more Rambos. This was so unnecessary. This was like Sylvester Stallone watching way too much Fox News and just had an idea. Watched like a lot of Fox News and the whole Taken franchise. He's like, I can do that too. Anyway, number 5, Rambo Last Blood. Moving on to my number 4 favorite Rambo movie. This is a movie that, this is the movie that was co-written by is Sylvester Stallone and James Cameron, the James Cameron. This is also a follow-up to a very good movie. This is a movie that has been spoofed in a lot of movies. Specifically, I believe Hot Shots Part 2 did a lot of spoofing of this movie. And that movie is coming in at number 4, Rambo First Blood Part 2. This is a movie that finds Rambo after the events of the first film in prison, breaking up gigantic boulders for some reason, gets recruited to do a special covert op back in Vietnam. We got to send you back, Rambo, to do an extraction of a POW. And so it's Rambo in Vietnam. Like, this movie should have been a prequel. Like, if they wanted to show Rambo in Vietnam, just show us a prequel before the events of First Blood, right? Just show us, like, on some random mission he was on in Vietnam before coming back home, and it would have been great. But the fact that they send him back there, they try to inject some, like, the end, they try to weave in, like, oh, it's the American government also is, like, using him. He's expendable, the whole term of expendable, like, which obviously became the Expendables. Not that this movie invented that term, but I think the fact that Rambo was expendable and he's like this superhero guy, I think lends itself to that franchise as well, which I'd be interested to go back and visit, especially after watching these. But so he goes to save this guy, and it's like almost effortless for him, and then but he finds out that, like, oh, you know, the U.S. government never really intended on him succeeding, was kind of hoping that he would fail, that way they could, you know, just kind of write it off. And then he gets revenge on the government, and I think it's trying to add, like, social commentary that the first movie had and did very well at adding into the story and was a big aspect of the first movie. I think they tried to do that, but instead of, you know, highlighting how the police treat, you know, war vets and just how the police treat people in general, this was more of a commentary on the U.S. military and how they used soldiers and all this stuff and considered them to be expendable. A lot of close-ups on his veiny arms, right? It's clearly more of the stereotypical Rambo action movie stuff. Russians are involved. There's this love interest that a lot of the casting doesn't really feel very authentic. She definitely feels like a kind of a mixed race girl. Like, she doesn't seem like she's 100% Vietnamese. She definitely, I don't know. It just felt like what you would see in, you know, a Rambo, the casting of a Rambo movie from 1985. And, you know, trying to give a love interest, because you got to have a love interest in these action movies. There's no love interest in the first one. People love the love interest. And that's one thing James Cameron's good at. James Cameron, not necessarily the most decorated screenwriter. Like, as far as the stories he comes up with, they're kind of generic. He knows the things. He knows what people want, and he just plugs them in because he knows it's going to make money. Highly successful, don't get me wrong, but he changes films into making something that's super interesting and specific and making them very broad and diluting a lot of it and trying to do a lot in a small amount of space. And it just, I don't know. I think the addition of James Cameron probably ruined this movie in a lot of ways. I don't know. I don't know what he was a part of. You also get the exploding arrows. There's a scene, like, there's a helicopter that's after Rambo, and it, for whatever reason, loves to fly really low to the ground. And there's a scene where Rambo's in a lake, and they're hovering over the lake trying to shoot him. But for some reason, the helicopter's like a foot off of the water surface. So Rambo's able to jump out of the water, grab a guy that's in the helicopter, and pull him out. ridiculous. Just like, and everything looks like a soundstage also. So for all of those reasons, Rambo First Blood, at least it's a Rambo movie, unlike Last Blood. Rambo First Blood Part 2, it's a Rambo movie. The action's not that great. I don't really care about the love interest. The injection of the political stuff seems like it was an afterthought. The breaking of the boulders in the beginning is like so cheesy. But it is what it is. Rambo First Blood Part 2 is coming in at number 4. And now a quick word from our sponsor. Now you can wear the many faces. Original art by Ray Taylor. Select pieces from the ongoing series of abstract ink paintings. All products made with high quality materials, made right here in the USA. Go to inspireddisorder.com/TMF merch to browse the entire collection and save yourself an extra 10% when you check out by using coupon code RTSTMF. So once again, go to inspireddisorder.com/TMF merch and save 10% when you use coupon code RTSTMF. And now, back to our show. Moving on to my third favorite Rambo movie. This is also the third Rambo movie, Rambo III. Very similar in a lot of ways to Rambo First Blood Part 2, but instead of going to Vietnam again, this movie picks up with Rambo living in Thailand, which makes sense, a neighbor to Vietnam. You know, he is doing these like blood sport type stick fighting. You get the iconic... he's been working out on his back muscles like crazy. Is the iconic, like, tying the bandana around his head shot before he goes and stick fights. And he is recruited, or he's asked to be part. They attempt to recruit him, his buddy, Colonel Tuckerson or whatever, Troutman. They attempt to recruit him to do a mission in Afghanistan because the Russians are invading and they're giving arms to the rebel army, which is, we find out now is the Taliban, obviously, which is something that happened in reality. Obviously, the politics of these movies probably a little bit off. I mean, that didn't end well for the United States, providing the Taliban with all this training and arms. But at the time, they were supposedly, it's similar to what we're doing in Ukraine. I mean, we're giving Ukraine all of this military arms and funding and all this kind of stuff, similar to fight off the Russians, similarly to what we were doing with Afghanistan, giving the Taliban, these rebel fighters, these weapons and things to fight off the Russians for us there. So they try to recruit Rambo to do that. He turns it down. Turns out Colonel Troutman, for whatever reason, is in combat. Like, it doesn't make sense why he would be in combat. He's a super old dude. He's a colonel, but whatever. He's in combat, and he gets captured. And Rambo doesn't like that, so he's got to go rescue his friend. So instead of the second movie going to rescue some random guy, this time it's personal. So Rambo goes to Afghanistan, which... I enjoy the change of scenery. It's a desert instead of a jungle. It's still the Rambo type of a story as far as these sequels go, where he's on this special mission to help get his friend out. His friend being tortured. Like, there's no way that old dude would be able to take that torture. Rambo's knife is even bigger, which is kind of fun, I guess. Instead of a love interest, there's a kid that happens to like the necklace that his love interest from the previous movie gave him. So there's kind of this almost like a father-son type of a dynamic between Rambo and this kid. Rambo bonds with the Taliban, playing their weird game, which I don't know how accurate. I don't know if that game exists or whatever, but, there's bonding moments, sure. The action is a lot better in this movie. The best action, I would say, out of all of them. Definitely more action-packed. You have helicopters again, still flying super low. You have tanks in this one. You got a lot of big explosions in this one. You have the scene where Rambo pulls out the shrapnel from his side and cauterizes it using gunpowder, lighting gunpowder, which is a great move that we've seen in other action movies. And of course, he goes, saves them. He's got this big fight with a giant, which is a bunch of common thing in a lot of action movies. He gets to a point where it's just him and the colonel, and they're pinned down in this little crevice, and it's the Russian army is coming after them, and they're just doing everything they can to survive. And of course, you have the moment where the cavalry comes in. I love that moment in movies with the cavalry. Obviously, I recently watched Stagecoach, where the literal cavalry comes to save the stagecoach. But that moment that's in so many movies, where it's you think you're done for. You think the main characters are done for. They've done all they can. They're running out of ammo. They're surrounded. And then the cavalry shows up. And in this movie, the cavalry is the Taliban, but you're cheering for them, regardless of the geopolitical politics of all of this stuff. For this movie, at this time, watching it unplugged from the reality of politics and all that kind of stuff, you're rooting for them, right? Because they're pinned down. And the rebels the rebels in any movie, look at Star Wars. You cheer for the rebels. They're the underdogs. They're the ones fighting against the fascist regime. So it's a great scene. And there's also a great scene where it's the tank versus the helicopter. Great kind of game of chicken that they just end up running into each other. But great action moments. There's the scene where Rambo's climbing up the side of a mountain, very much like Mission Impossible 2. Has, definitely I would imagine inspired Mission Impossible 2 in some ways. But yeah, just a lot of fun, just a really fun action movie. Right? Looks like it was filmed on location. I mean, probably not in Afghanistan, but in a desert. Doesn't look like it was filmed in on a soundstage like First Blood Part 2. So I enjoyed it. Right? Probably top 3, one of the best. I would say. One of the better of the Rambo movies, especially for that kind of template of Rambo movie. So number 3 is Rambo 3. Moving on, also probably the most Rambo ever looked was Rambo 3. He is the most jacked. He is the most badass, I would say, for a lot of it, maybe. But let's move on. My number 2 favorite Rambo movie. This one, by far the goriest movie, by far the most graphic movie, by far kind of the most epic action as well, despite it being super gory and all of that. My number 2 favorite Rambo movie is Rambo from 2008. This is the one that was directed by Sylvester Stallone, also written by Sylvester Stallone, starring Sylvester Stallone, obviously. This one, in a lot of ways, feels like a combination of First Blood Part 2 and Rambo 3. In some ways, it has aspects of both of those wrapped into this movie, where it opens with Rambo in Thailand, obviously way older, retired, kind of doing his thing, going hunting for cobras in his time off, giving people rides in his boat up the river. He gets recruited to escort these missionaries who are going to provide medical assistance as well as selling them on Jesus to parts of Burma, which is Myanmar now, because that is where the Civil War is at in that area of the world. And Rambo doesn't want to do it, but the female part of this missionary crew convinces him. She becomes kind of like the love interest that was in First Blood Part 2, but not really. But at least she's able to convince him. And on their way, crazy shit happens. You're seeing people get torn apart by bullets, by these large caliber bullets. You're seeing people burned, exploded, dismembered, body parts flying away, heads being exploded. Super gory, super violent. But I think part of that is to illustrate the horrors of war. Like, I think what this movie does is it, in a way that the previous movies, especially like First Blood Part 2, I think was trying to do, is to truly show the horrors of war and to show kind of what it was like in Vietnam and why so many people were severely traumatized from not only Vietnam, but from war in general, because you're seeing people just getting torn in half, which I don't know how accurate that is to actual combat, but I would imagine if you're using large caliber bullets out of a gun that's shooting them very fast in succession, it is very likely that humans turn into piles of flesh and bone and blood on the ground very effortlessly. So definitely showing the brutalities of war. So he drops them off. They instantly get, like, that town gets invaded by the evil people, and they get captured. And the church hires mercenaries to go rescue them, and because Rambo knows where he dropped them off, he's the only one that knows where they dropped him off, he is hired to then escort the mercenaries to the same place he escorted these Christian people. Of course, the mercenaries are all kind of like very whiny, complainy, don't seem like elite warriors in any way, and talk down to Rambo as if he doesn't know anything, which is kind of funny. I enjoy that kind of aspect of it. When they show up, obviously, they can't handle it, and Rambo is kind of there now to save everybody, which I enjoy. I appreciate that. It definitely elevates the action, not only in just the gore and the horrific aspects of it and the body dismemberment and all that stuff, but it elevates, like, there's a scene where he takes a claymore and has them chase after him, and he puts the claymore, he knows where, like, a bomb is, because he just knows everything, right? Puts it by this bomb that didn't explode, and when the bad guys get there, they pull the claymore, and it explodes, and there's this giant explosion, which is pretty badass. There's a scene where Rambo rips the throat out of a guy when he's there to rescue the girl who's about to be raped. It is just so brutal, but crazy good action. Good action, well-filmed action, better casting all around. Like, the people look like they are from that area, as opposed to First Blood Part 2, which didn't seem like that at all. And again, we have the cavalry, the rebels, coming to help at the very end, which is similar to Rambo 3. And it ends with him going back home to Arizona, which I felt like should have been just end it there, right? You get to show the brutality of war, which he never got to do. You kind of got to make up for First Blood Part 2 and also Rambo 3. It was kind of like a legacy sequel where it kind of rebooted those things, but also did it in a more of a modern day style. Perfect. End it right there. And then they went and did Last Blood, which was just garbage. But Rambo from 2008 is my second favorite Rambo movie. Join Inspired Disorder Plus today. Head on over to inspireddisorder.com/plus to join. Membership includes members-only discounts and deals. You get access to the Ray Taylor Show completely ad-free, as well as bonus episodes. You get access to the complete live painting archive. You also get access to every single podcast ever produced by Inspired Disorder, hosted by Ray Taylor. You get access to Ray Taylor's personal blog,
as well as the opportunity to ask me any questions. So if you want to start a podcast, you're into art, ask me anything. And so many more things are being added every day to Inspired Disorder Plus. So sign up today, become a member, head on over to inspireddisorder.com/plus and become an Inspired Disorder Plus member today.
Moving on to the best. In my opinion, there is a clear first and a clear worst in this list. And anybody that would say anything other than, I guess you could argue this one is different than all the other Rambo movies, but it was the first. It's not this movie's fault that the other movies, that James Cameron changed the formula of the movie, right? James Cameron took Alien and turned this horror, sci-fi horror space movie into an action movie, right? James Cameron took Rambo, which is like massive political, like social commentary, and turn it into a generic action template. So it's not this movie's fault that the subsequent movies were different. But this movie, I think, on a lot of ways, messaging as a film, it says a lot. It has by far the most accurate depiction of the police I've ever seen in a movie. And that movie is, of course, First Blood. The very first Rambo movie. Rambo's is going to Hope, Washington to meet up with a war buddy, finds out his war buddy's dead, kind of on his way, passing through town. Cop picks him up, offers to drive him to the edge of town because he doesn't like his kind around. And when Rambo gets dropped off, he's like, you know what? I'm tired of not being welcome at my home, right? After the Vietnam War, a lot of people were protesting the soldiers that were coming back who were suffering from massive PTSD, were suffering because the government completely let them down, and then now the people of that live here are against them. The police hate them because they're homeless, because they have mental health issues, and the police don't really give a shit about those things. And Rambo decides to walk back into town, right, as a point of pride. He's like, I'm going to go to this town, and I'm going to go find somewhere to eat, right? For whatever reason, he's like, fuck you, I'm going into this I'm walking into this town. I'm a free man. I sacrificed my life for this country, and I'm going to do this thing, police officer. And of course, the police officer acts like police do, right? No, they're anti-homeless people, especially like anti-homeless vets. That happens. A lot of homeless people are vets anyway, and the police just do not care about any of the homeless whatsoever. They are, trump up charges in order to just arrest people. When he brings them in, just dehumanizes them on every level, so much so that the way he's being treated at this police precinct gives him flashbacks to how he was treated at the POW camp, right? Like, in every way, showing an honest depiction of the police and how the police act to this day. And what I love about this movie, unlike most movies that show bad cops, right? Most movies show bad cops as if they are rogue bad cops, or as if there's just a small group of bad cops, like Training Day was just a group of bad cops, or a lot of them are just like a cop here or there. Versus this movie shows the institution of policing being bad, being against homeless people, being against military people, doing everything they can to take the freedoms away from people that they don't like. So the PTSD, he tries to escape, right? Just as he escaped the POW camp. And what happens? The police go to hunt him, right? Just as we see during the George Floyd protests, police congratulating each other on their outing to go hunt people, right? It's come out multiple times of police departments cheering each other on to go hunt civilians. And in this movie, there is a cop. I mean, they're all out to get him. I mean, yeah, he escaped prison, but he should never have been arrested to begin with, right? There was no, like, he was carrying his Bowie knife, right? So because of that, they lock him up, and because he's homeless, and because he smells. But literally, a guy with a hunting rifle and a scope and a helicopter is trying to kill him from the helicopter. Even when Rambo tries to give up, the cops try to kill him, try to murder him, because that's what cops do. In real life, cops murder citizens regularly. Cops murder children regularly and get away with it. And when the spotlight's on them, like the cops in Uvalde, they do everything possible to cover it up. And that's what I loved about First Blood. Is like, yes, like this is so, like, it's so socially aware for 2022, and it was made back in 1982. 40 years ago, this movie is still depicting cops as accurately as cops act today. Insane. And even cops recruiting regular citizens to pretend to be cops in order to hunt Rambo, which that's Uvalde Police Department, recruiting biker gangs to help them keep the press out. So I love this movie I was like, while watching this, I mean, it's also great, it's like the escalation of also the police escalating the situation in every way. Like Rambo is just trying to get away. But because they keep pursuing him, because they're shooting at him, he sets up these booby traps to just slow them down. And then they do not stop. They keep escalating it. And then Rambo's like, okay, I'm done running. I'm going to go and attack you now. Right? And then they bring in the colonel. And there's the great monologue that Sylvester Stallone gives. Just such a great monologue about how he's like, what's the point? I'm just used. What was the point of the war? We didn't do anything. Just a great monologue. Great acting. Great performance. Best performance in all these movies. Best monologue. They tried to inject that same kind of thing in First Blood Part 2, and it just did not work at all, in my opinion. Not even close to this one. You also get to see how the media spins the story in favor of the police, the propaganda that the media do, which you see in this. I mean, this movie is so, I mean, you would say it's ahead of its time. I just don't think it's ever changed. I think just that's what the media's always done and just said, regurgitated whatever the cops say, and the cops just don't care about humans. They just do not care about civilians, and it's their war against us. Like, it's the cops against everybody that they think should be in jail. And if you don't go to jail, then your life is meaningless to them. Unless you're a white nationalist, and then they show a lot of restraint, and then they show you a lot of respect. But if you're anything other than a white nationalist, the cops don't show any restraint. The cops will attempt to hunt you. The cops will potentially kill you and go on a paid vacation. So, yeah, the best movie, by far an amazing film in general. In general, this is like levels above all of the Rambo movies. Like, clearly a movie that was successful at the time for all of these reasons, for its social commentary, for it really showing the reality of policing in this country. And then James Cameron came in and turned it into an action franchise, which this movie does have action, but it's very much a drama too. Very much a drama. But, yeah. First Blood, the best Rambo movie, in my opinion. So let me go one more time. This is my top 5 Rambo movies ranked. Starting off with number 5 is Rambo Last Blood. Number 4 is Rambo First Blood Part 2. Number 3 is Rambo 3. Number 2 is Rambo from 2008. And my favorite Rambo movie of all time, hands down, doesn't even come close, is First Blood. Let me know how you would rank the Rambo films in the comments. Hit me up on social media. I would like to know how you defend any of the other movies as being better than how I rank them. I feel this is a solid, definitive ranking of the films, but I could be wrong, and I'm willing to at least entertain your opinions in my comments. So do so if you wish. And go back and watch First Blood. I think it's a movie that it holds up so well on so many levels. You know, a government that doesn't care about the soldiers that come back that are severely traumatized with PTSD. You have a policing department that doesn't care about people in general, will hunt people, will escalate situations, will dehumanize whenever possible. I really enjoyed rewatching these movies and was really blown away in my rewatch of First Blood. So check him out. Rambo.
New episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out every single day. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere our podcasts are found. Binge the full week over at inspireddisorder.com/plus. Buy Ray Taylor Show merch over at inspireddisorder.com. And follow the show on Instagram at Ray Taylor Show. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace out!
Today is the day where you wake up and you realize that everything that you've been dreaming about, everything that you've been wanting, every goal and wish and hope that you've ever had can become real. Dreams can come true. What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.